Good morning, everybody. I don't normally do lives this early in the morning, but I have had an early start to my day today, and so I wanted to jump on here and share a few things that I was thinking about when I was reading. It's actually been a little while now. I've written down my notes because I wanted to share. It's just not been the right time, so I want to share today. It is a very muggy morning here in South Carolina. So as you jump on, if you want to share where you're from, we are here in the deep south, and we are in the midst of what I'll call the dog days of summer. And so we have days that are reaching into, the low 90s, which is not horrific, but it's definitely hot. So anyhow, and I got a nice early start to my day, and I'm on my favorite place, the front porch, with my Bible and my notes here, and I wanted to share some thoughts for you specifically about Psalm 145, because when I was reading this, I guess it's been a few weeks now, this in particular, this passage, it struck me of how instructive this psalm can be for us mamas. And so I wrote down some notes for me to share with you all, and I just kind of wanted to go through the first few verses. So to get started, let me just read a few verses here. Psalm 145, I will extol thee, my God, O King, and I will bless thy name forever and ever. Every day will I bless thee, and I will praise thy name forever and ever. Great is the Lord, and greatly to be praised, and his greatness is unsearchable. One generation shall praise thy works to another, and shall declare thy mighty acts. I will speak of the glorious honor of thy majesty and thy wondrous works. And men shall speak of the might of thy terrible acts, and I will declare thy greatness. They shall abundantly utter the memory of thy great goodness, and shall sing of thy righteousness. The Lord is gracious and full of compassion, slow to anger, and of great mercy. The Lord is good to all, and his tender mercies are over all his works. All thy works shall praise thee, O Lord, and thy saints shall bless thee. They shall speak of the glory of thy kingdom and talk of thy power, to make known to the sons of men his mighty acts and the glorious majesty of his kingdom. Thy kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and thy dominion endureth throughout all generations. The Lord upholdeth all that fall and raiseth up those that be bowed down. The eyes of all wait upon thee, and thou givest them their meat in due season. Thou openest thine hand, and satisfies the desire of every living thing. The Lord is righteous in all his ways, and holy in all his works. The Lord is nigh unto all them that call upon him, to all that call upon him in truth. He will fulfill the desire of them that fear him. He also will hear their cry and will save them. The Lord preserveth all them that love him, but all the wicked will he destroy. My mouth shall speak the praise of the Lord, and let all flesh bless his holy name forever and ever. And so what I was thinking as I was reading this psalm is it specifically was instructive to me as a mother, because this psalm speaks of one generation declaring the greatness of the Lord to another generation. In verse 4, one generation shall praise thy works to another. So that makes me think of us mamas, that it is our duty to praise the works of the Lord to our children. And as I was going through, I was actually looking for key words in here, and I found 4 things in particular. Well, 3 things. I found the word greatness over and over. So in verse 3, great is the Lord, and greatly to be praised, and his greatness is unsearchable. And then again in verse 6, I will declare thy greatness. And then in Let me look here. Verse 7. They shall abundantly utter the memory of thy great goodness. So greatness is one of the things we're to speak to the Lord, or to speak to our children about. Do we, throughout the day, declare the Lord's greatness? Do we remind our children of the greatness of the Lord through his works of providence, through beholding all of his creation? Throughout the day, are we reminding the Lord of his greatness? But then if you look here in this psalm, it speaks of his mighty works. And then, thirdly, it speaks of his acts. So in verse, in verse 4, one generation shall praise thy works to another and shall declare thy mighty acts. And then in verse 6, men shall speak of the might of thy terrible acts, and I will declare thy greatness. Then again in verse 10, all thy works shall praise thee. It's just tremendous if you start looking for these key words to make known to the sons of men his mighty acts. And then again, if you continue down in the psalm, you will see the theme over and over and over again: the Lord's works, the Lord's acts, and his greatness. So then if you look in the psalm, you will look and you will see several characteristics of the Lord in here. So I wrote down several of these characteristics. One is it talks about the Lord's might. Now the might goes right with his greatness. Next, it speaks of his goodness. It speaks of his righteousness. It declares how the Lord is gracious. He is full of compassion, slow to anger, and of great mercy. He is good, and again it speaks of his power. So in looking over this psalm, I could see how this psalm right here could be an instruction to mamas on how to be with their children throughout the day, causing their children to consider the great works, the great acts of God, and how can those great works and those great acts of God reflect his character. And to be reflecting to our children the goodness of the Lord and the righteousness of the Lord. And do we portray to our children how gracious, compassionate, and slow to anger he is? That he is of great mercy and that he is good. Are we portraying this to our children? And so we are told again and again to declare it, to speak of it, to share it. It says in verse 4, we're to declare it. It says in verse 5, we're to speak of it. Again in verse 6, speak of it, and I will declare it. But even more than that, are we not only declaring it and speaking of it, but are we an example of it? Are we in our ways declaring it? Because our children will listen more to how we are than what we say. They are going to watch what we do rather than what we say. So yes, we need to be instructing them day in and day out. We need to be talking and speaking of the Lord's great works, his great wonders, and his goodness, righteousness, graciousness, compassion, slow to anger, of great mercy, how good he is in his power. We need to be speaking these words of life into our children. But are we exemplifying that? Do our children see in us the character of Christ? In our reactions in the home, and I am speaking to myself here, do we behave with graciousness and compassion? Are we slow to anger with our children? Are we of great mercy with our children? Or are we harsh, and are we bringing down the law? Not that we don't expect our children to obey, because we do, and we are loving them and we are showing them our tender care by doing that. But are we doing so with a spirit of gentleness, with a spirit of mercy, with a spirit that is righteous, but also full of mercy and goodness? And our children are going to pick up on that even more than our words. So I hope that was an encouragement to you. If it was, give me a thumbs up. Maybe put something in the comments that gave you encouragement today. If you haven't had your time with the Lord yet today, I would encourage you to go to Psalm 145 and read through it with these things in mind. And let's all seek today to be speaking these things and exemplifying these things with our children in our homes. I hope that you all have a wonderful day, and I pray that this was a blessing to you. Have a great day. Bye now.